Good shit, and useful too. But if you were to take a look at how we humans treat it, in multiple senses of that word, you'd think that we don't actually need this stuff to survive. Take the extreme drought in California as an example. It's almost difficult to know where to begin with this story of climate catastrophe exacerbated by human stupidity and greed. But since a drought is a bit easier to explain than the complexities of human idiocy, let's start there. Now, even here, much of it can be ascribed to human idiocy in the form of climate change, but on top of that, much of California is just dry. Consider this visual, so conceived by Mark Reisner in his book Cadillac Desert, where he writes that had humans never settled in Los Angeles, evolution, left to its own devices, might have created in 1 million more years the ideal creature for that habitat, a camel with gills. And for those parts that wouldn't be inhabited by weird camels, they still depend on diverted water sources to produce more than half of our domestic agriculture. Yeah, more than half. Like 99% of artichokes, 99% of walnuts, 97% of kiwis, 97% of plums, 95% of garlic, 89% of cauliflower, 71% of spinach, and on and on and on. Needless to say, this is a big deal, and when I still lived there, I thought, well fuck, I'm happy to cut down on a shower or two a week to help save some fucking artichokes. My roommate might not appreciate it, but hell, we all need to do our part, right? But sadly, despite Governor Brown's emergency restrictions on urban water usage, my decline in personal hygiene wouldn't make much of a dent. Why? Because only 20% of California's water usage is urban, i.e. households, businesses, and government combined. 80% is agriculture. And they're exempt from all restrictions handed down by Governor Brown's emergency water plan. Well, yeah, Eleanor, think of the artichokes. Yeah, fine, the artichokes. But how about this? Out of the 80% of water usage, 10%, a full 1.1 trillion gallons of water is used by almond farms. Do we really need that many fucking almonds? One of the most water-thirsty nuts in the market? Or how about 70 million cunting gallons of water a year that's used just for fracking? That's fresh water used in order to extract fossil fuels producing toxic water, which is then dumped into California aquifers, you know, the places that store fucking drinking water. Can you tell that we've gotten into the human stupidity part? And here's another. Nestle, creator of the catchphrase, "water is not a human right," sucks 400 million gallons of water a year out of California in order to make bottled water and sell it back to you. What the fuck? Side note, sign this petition to get them to stop. There'll be a link at the end of the episode. Or how about 100 billion gallons of water a year used to grow alfalfa? No, not the kind that just goes wonderfully on a sprout and avocado sandwich. This is the kind that gets shipped to China in order to feed their cattle. Yes, we are quite literally shipping Chinese cows 100 billion gallons of water a year. Meanwhile, it takes about 3,430 gallons of water to produce one fucking steak, and that includes the high-pressure hoses that clean off animal and fecal matter from factory farm floors. Yummy. So maybe that federal report was right. A vegan diet just might be best for the planet. And before you freak out and clutch your burger in wild defense, I'm not advocating that everyone go vegan. However, we can't all stop supporting factory farms and downing more red meat in one day than a vampire with a wicked case of the munchies. And speaking of sucking, we can stop buying bottled water from sociopaths who suck us dry and profit off the thirst they created. And we can stop shrugging our shoulders at poisoned water supplies thanks to big oil and gas fuckery. And we can put restrictions on big ag even if it means we lose a few almonds. So yes, California, there is something you can do to help out. But it's not just about skipping a shower or turning your lawn into a rock garden. It's calling bullshit on everything from cows and CAFOs to the fat cats in big ag, the drillers and spillers who don't think that you'll fight back. Fuck 'em. Let's fight back. From tweets to marching in the streets, this is Act Out. Welcome to Act Out. I'm Eleanor Goldfield, and this is your tipping point. Let's shift from extreme drought to extreme measures and dive into the water crisis in Baltimore and our low-life scum award of the week.
You low-life scum.
You may recall that last year in Detroit, thousands of residents and even the UN protested the city's proposed water shutoffs, claiming that water is in fact a human right, and that shutting off water to residents should only be permissible if it can be proven that people can pay their water bills, but aren't. Well, Baltimore is the new Detroit, and in cities like Detroit or Baltimore, where in the latter, 24% of the population lives below the national poverty line, the majority of residents threatened with water shutoffs are now at the crossroads of deciding over food and water. Not to mention that over half of Baltimore residents live in rental housing, which wouldn't be a problem as long as your landlord pays the water bills. Oh, they don't? Well, the city of Baltimore refuses to open new water accounts for anyone who isn't a property owner. So, as was the case with a low-income family who started their current rental in November 2014, they now suddenly owe $5,000 in water bills due to the landlord's "fuck it, I'm out" response. Meanwhile, they can't dispute the charges because their name isn't on the account. Welcome to the land of the free. And this isn't an uncommon story. Even if your landlord is responsible, with water prices having surged 42% in the past 3 years, thousands of low-income residents are facing water shutoffs, and they're not even the primary parties responsible. Kind of like how only 14% of California's water is used by households, Baltimore's water woes can be attributed in large part to companies, like, for example, the now bankrupt business RG Steel, who owes an incredible $7 million in unpaid water bills. Or how about government offices and nonprofits who owe bills amounting to $10 million? In fact, of the total unpaid $40 million in unpaid water bills, $15 million of that belongs entirely to just 369 businesses. So where's the threat of water shutoffs for big business? Oh, silly poor person. We wouldn't go after them. In fact, we'll offer them money we don't have in order to draw plans to raise water prices even more. Yep. Last year, Baltimore nearly finalized a plan that would have made possible the privatization of the city's water through a partnership with an infamous big corporation called Veolia. This evil behemoth has a track record of corporate assholery, including extreme rate hikes for consumers, labor rights abuses, and health and safety violations. You know, more that land of the free goodness. Now, it's important to note that the only reason that the Veolia deal didn't go through is because residents fought back, something that we're seeing here again. And regardless of which city you're in, you can join the fight by donating to the Baltimore Water Project and visiting Baltimore People's Power Assembly. Baltimore's water system infrastructure is shit, undoubtedly. It wastes enough water to fill the city's World Trade Center building each day. But instead of offering Dr. Evil's water company $500,000 to draw up plans for privatizing your water system, wouldn't it make more sense to look to some of those businesses you're currently not threatening with water shutoffs for some cash, and then, I don't know, at the very least offer comprehensive payment plans and accounts to lower-income renters? Until then, Baltimore, your twisted logic that hangs poor people out to dry whilst you drown in crony capitalist cretinism awards you the shit-stained title of low-life scum.
You low-life scum.
Now, let's shift from bad news to good news. After all, this show isn't just about the bad shit. It's about art and fun and laughing and thinking and wine and more art. And not just any art, art with teeth. Founded by artist Keef Ward, Art with Teeth is exactly what it sounds like. A collection of sharpened and pointed pieces of art that dig into the establishment and challenge the status quo through creativity. I talked to Keef this past week about Art with Teeth, the role of creatives in pushing for change, and some artists you absolutely need to check out now. Take a look. Why activist art? Why not just art?
Well, okay, I feel like, for one thing, if the creative class isn't going to do anything about the challenges that are facing us as a species, who's going to? I mean, it's not going to be the politicians, it's not going to be the business people, it's always been the creatives that are pushing cultural change. And so, with all the artists asleep at the wheel, we're doomed. So this was sort of like a call to arms to get artists to do their part, to recognize the responsibility of their gifts.
So you do feel that it's the responsibility of artists to comment on socio and political issues through their art?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. You know, if not us, who? Writers, musicians, painters.
What would you say to an artist who says, like, well, oh, I'm just not political, so that's why I don't do political art?
Yeah. I think of this thing, do you know the artist Anthony Frida, the New York artist? Yeah, yeah. So Frida was talking about how it always frustrates him when people say that they're not political, because it's sort of like saying like, I don't mind that my couch is on fire. You know, it's fine. You're good with that? Fine. It just means you're not paying attention. That means like I choose not to engage in the challenges of the world. I prefer to live a delusional fucking life. Are we swearing on here?
Oh, you can say fuck, shit, ass. You can say whatever you want. All of the above. So how would people start to incorporate activism into their lives or politics? Like, if you just start paying attention, how can you start infusing whatever you might be passionate about doing, whether that's art, music, or cooking, or whatever? How would you start infusing the socio-political actions into that?
Yeah, well, try and marry it with what's happening in your life. Like, another one of the sides of Art with Teeth is that I'm trying to kind of like make a living at making art and make a platform for activist artists, and to show that there is a demand for this kind of art. And clearly there is. My page has grown really fast. It's been like a year and a few months, and we're like just about to 20 grand. No ads, like not a dime spent, all organic. There was a twofold thing in Art with Teeth to show that there was a demand for it, and also to hold galleries accountable. When it gets big enough, I want to rate galleries. I want to go in and have crowds, rate them with a star system from toothless to razor sharp, and then sort of publicly shame them into doing their part, to holding up their responsibility. I mean, they've got these cathedrals for art, and they're showing completely vague, vapid work that's like a video piece about a sculpture that doesn't mean anything, that you don't understand unless you read, the huge long statement and no Kant, or whatever it is.
I mean, why do you think that there's been that sort of apathy in art?
Well, I think it's gone to the tower. I mean, it's sort of what's happening with society. There's this two-tiered thing where the rich are getting richer, and art's getting into that gated community land. It's a commodity. It's lost its communication, I feel like.
So I'm curious, where do you find all these artists that you put onto Art with Teeth?
Oh, yeah. Well, so I grew up loving, feisty motherfuckers. And actually, I took some notes from my earlier stuff. So like Herring, Basquiat, Jenny Holzer, Barbara Kruger, Ron English, Kiki Smith, they were all really early formative influences for me. And so I always loved art that says something. I mean, you've got this vehicle that you can communicate with. And if you're not saying anything, you're wasting the vehicle. So it really kicked in, in my teens. I grew up in Orange County in California, and was always very political. I mean, it's a super right-wing, conservative kind of suburban. It's like the beginning of any Steven Spielberg film, like that first 5 minutes before everything goes crazy. That's where I grew up. So it always drove me crazy. At that point, I was really into Model United Nations, and I was like a big debater and really verbally active. And so at that point, I sort of switched my focus to visual stuff, all culminating around a trip to New York City in like '86, where I ditched all of my delegations and rode the subway and checked out Keith Haring's art, and Basquiat was alive then, and all of that stuff. And so I was just like, oh, well, this is what I should be doing. And so I've been working towards that. I haven't completely arrived, but in the meantime, I thought I should celebrate these people that have been my heroes my whole life. So that's how Art with Teeth was created.
I know I usually hate when people are like, what are your favorite musicians? But if somebody said like, okay, I have no idea what a political artist even does, like I have no idea, what would be some political artists that you would say you have to check these out right now?
I'd send them to Anthony Frida. I'd send him to, there's this guy out of the Midwest called Vincent. Vincent's pretty fucking amazing. I'd send him to C.S. Stanley out of Indianapolis, Plastic Jesus, Los Angeles, Recycled Propaganda out of Vegas. Let's see, Joe Webb from England, Alex Schaefer from Los Angeles. He does the Burning Banks. Yeah, I mean, I feel really bad because like I've got 10,000 images in Art with Teeth and I should be able to just rattle this stuff off, but I tend to work in like this week's set. And so like that's who I'm really into right now. So we tend to do a run of one artist for a day or another day.
Talk a little about how you see the role of art and activism. I know you said that if creatives are asleep at the wheel, then we're all doomed. But how do you see,
Right.
like if they were awake at the wheel, how do you see them having a role in pushing for socio-political change? What do you see that looking like?
Let's say the Foo Fighters started talking like Rage Against the Machine. Like that's how it would look. It would just be infusions of content, infusions of message, like not being scared of going against the big companies. It would be like a challenge. I mean, it would be more like the 70s.
And making it cool to be against the big companies and making it cool and sexy to be political and socially engaged. Art with Teeth had a gallery showing. Is that something that you're going to do more of in the future?
Oh, totally. Love to. Miss Jennifer LaRue of Terra Obscura did our first show in Spokane, Washington. And we got Jilly Ballistic from Brooklyn and C.S. Stanley from Indianapolis. And then the founding partner, Ryan Noble, and myself, we all had works in it. And so it was our first like physical show. And it was really nice to kind of like transcend the digital barrier. So yeah, I would love to do more of them. I would love to tour it. For any galleries out in anywhere, really. If you have, people that would appreciate this kind of work, I would love to show it.
For more information on Art with Teeth, visit the link below. And now I want to show you an awesome piece of art that Keef actually tipped me off about. If you were lucky enough to be wandering around Brooklyn's Fort Greene Park early on April 6th, then you might have seen something absolutely fucking awesome. A bust of Edward Snowden. The Fort Greene Prison Ship Martyrs Monument was originally erected in honor of POWs who lost their lives during the American Revolution. And apparently the goal of these artists was to highlight those who sacrificed their safety in the fight against modern-day tyrannies. An artist went all out for this installation. This wasn't just a papier-mâché after-school project. This was a 100-pound bronze bust, complete with all-caps lettering at the foot of the monument, the way you'd see at a quote-unquote real monument. As if recognition of Snowden's contributions had finally come to fruition. But alas, it was too good to be true. By noon, NYPD had already begun dismantling the installation, and by 12:15, they had put a giant tarp over the bust, which feels to me like an accidental real-world metaphor, an overt and all too tactile representation of the covering up of Snowden's heroic deeds in order to keep this twisted machine greased with fear and submission. But despite the work of New York City's finest, activists from the Illuminator Art Collective came out that night to project an image of the bust into the darkened space it had so briefly occupied. Kyle Depew, a member of the collective, told Gothamists that while the state may remove any material artifacts that speak in defiance against incumbent authoritarianism, the acts of resistance remain in the public consciousness, and it is in sharing that act of defiance that hope resides. A fucking men, Kyle. So much a fucking men that I couldn't resist making a meme of that quote, which I'll get to in a minute. But first, a little profile update on the surveillance state and what you can do to fight it and protect yourself. The breadth and depth of our government's vast spying network was all but unknown to us until Edward Snowden leaked the files to Laura Poitras and Glenn Greenwald. He risked his life, gave up his livelihood, home, and family in order to show us how many liberties we'd already given up in the name of security. And how this is not only something that makes us less free, but less secure. From Facebook and Twitter to Barbies, the city of Seattle, billboards, and the Big Bang Theory, so much of our everyday lives are thrown into this massive database of pointless data points that it's pretty much fucking impossible to spot terrorist activities, like, say, the Boston bombing, which authorities completely failed to prevent. Imagine looking for one insidious clue in a sea of hi moms, drunk dials, yoga pant Instagrams, and cat videos. Good fucking luck. In short, this unhinged, unregulated trawling of our personal lives is unconstitutional, Orwellian, fucking creepy, and wildly inefficient. So, what can we do about it? Well, plenty. But first, here's something that you can do right now. Encryption is on this week's Google That Shit segment. So here's how it usually works. I give you a phrase to Google, you click on the first result, pause this video, read, watch, laugh, cry, and then come back and I'll be sitting right here waiting for you. But this week, we're switching it up a little bit, and we're going to ecosia that shit. Because every time you search via ecosia, they plant a tree. And trees are good because they give us air and fertile soil and stop erosion and shade and more air, shit like that. So without further ado, let's ecosia that shit. Email self-defense. Pretty badass, right? And don't forget to choose your operating system at the top and just follow the instructions to be flipping off prying eyes in no time. Which brings me to the aforementioned quote of the day and frontline segments. So let's start with our quote from Kyle Depew, member of the Illuminator Art Collective. As I mentioned in an earlier episode, you can make your own memes on memegenerator.net, a great resource for those among us who are Photoshop challenged. Also, for those of you on the front lines wanting more than just memes, go to fight215.org to stop the renewal of Section 215 of the totally misnomered Patriot Act, basically the carte blanche for the NSA and FBI to spy on you. On the site, you can also sign up to be directly connected to Congress via phone, tweet at Congress, and learn more about 215 and the fight against surveillance. Now, without further ado, here are your anti-surveillance memes, starting with the quote of the day. That's our show this week. Thank you so much for watching. If you want more on the surveillance state, check out our Frontline segment from episode 3. This last slide will be all the sites that we mentioned in tonight's show, including a link to help support Occupy.com. We are a donation-run organization, so anything you can contribute is hugely appreciated. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and subscribe on YouTube. Good night, and act out.